Liebe Kolleginnen und Kollegen, herzlich willkommen.
Dear colleagues, warm welcome to our initial press conference of the Fourth Synodal Assembly here in Frankfurt on the Main. Dear colleagues, dear representatives of the media, welcome. We will have a German and an English live stream as well. Welcome to all on the live stream. I also welcome the press spokespersons of the ZDK, Ms. Baas, and we have the same procedure as in the last Synodal Assemblies. After this press conference, we will briefly visit those who are protesting outside, and we will start the Synodal Assembly at 2 o'clock on time. The colleagues amongst you who will join the conference later on will have marked seats. I will show this to you. Catering, please keep to the space here. During the breaks, you can, of course, talk to the members of the Synodal Assembly, but we have to keep the distances. Tomorrow, there is the possibility to speak with Cardinal Frings and the Secretary General, Dr. Gillis. And we have 209 members of the Synodal Assembly who are present, and this number is to be kept in case there are no absentees due to sickness. So I give the floor to Ms. Stetter-Kahr, President of the Central Committee of German Catholics. Ladies and gentlemen, representatives of the media, a very warm welcome to the Fourth Synodal Assembly here in Frankfurt on the Main. This time in a slightly different setting than you might be used to, but we are all very well used to change and dynamics at this synodal path. At this Fourth Synodal Assembly, 14 texts are up for discussion, 9 of them in a second reading, meaning they are up for final decision. And this is a clear indication that we are entering the home stretch. At the Fifth Synodal Assembly in March of next year, many things should be clear enough to set a sign. We want to open the way to the future for the Catholic Church in Germany and remain closely connected with the Universal Church. That is what we are working for here at the Synodal Assembly. And for the same, many people work hard between these assemblies, especially in the 4 forums that prepare these Frankfurt meetings. Once you are able to see the finish line, it often mobilizes forces once again. We know this from sports. For me, it's like this. I want us to cross this line together, to run across the line together, so that there are no winners or losers, but rather a team that happily embraces each other behind the finish line, a team that can say, we made it together. However, I would also like to reach the finish line in a good time. We don't have to break the world record, but we do have to show everyone who is waiting for the finish time, everyone who welcomes us at the finish band, that we have power. We want to set a good time, a time that shows that it was important for us to be as fast as possible. In order to keep our positive power, we have to manage not to be unsettled by boos coming from the edge of the track, nor from people asking, well, what is all this about? The synodal path can't create anything anyway. Everything has been fixed and cemented forever. No. It's not. Here in Germany, we have to take on our own responsibility for this run, so to speak, of the church. We do not take the responsibility away from anyone else. We respect the different responsibilities in a worldwide synodal church. Responsibility of the timekeepers, of the coaches, the sports directors. All of them are important and indispensable. But we here on the synodal path, we are running. And we don't take detours along the way. We don't leave our runners' hearts in Rome and say, you do it, we wait and see. It wouldn't be very Catholic if we did that. Because if something concerns the whole, and that is what is meant with this word, then it must also be supported by all parts of the whole. I hope also in the future. One of the things to be decided at this Fourth Synodal Assembly is the decision regarding a synodal council. Such a council would consolidate the synodality that we have gained along the way, and I think that it is important because the commitment of all of us is way bigger than like a disposable bottle to be thrown away. The Catholic Church in Germany, in this case, would miss a Kairos. Now I'm looking forward to our 3-day run here in Frankfurt. And of course, I am a little bit nervous because we are on the track. You will report on everything, which is good. And I would like to say simply thank you for being here. Thank you, Ms. Stetter-Karp. And when it comes to the running track, well, I have to say welcome to Dr. Frank Ronne as well, who is in charge of everything technical. Questions from colleagues on the live stream, please use the email address pressesteller@dbk.de so that we receive them. Our next speaker is Bishop Betzing of the German Bishops' Conference. Welcome to all of you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for your big interest, for your reporting over the next 3 days. And I would like to build upon what Ms. Dr. Stetter-Karp said. I'm nervous in a positive way. It's also a bit like arriving at a well-known place, a familiar place here in Frankfurt. And of course, I do hope that we will take decisions with us when we go home again. We have important texts, 3 foundational texts and many implementation texts that will be decided upon if the second reading is enough. And it is my desire, my hope that we will reach decisions. I have to stress that a lot of work has been done in the synodal forums since the last assembly, and also by all the synod members in the different procedures. Sometimes people say, okay, there's such a speed, only one time per speaker when there's a general debate. Does this really help? But you have to keep in mind that there's a lot of work in the background by the motions committees. There were hearings that have been offered at different levels, different groups of synod members meeting and dealing intensively with the texts. This is a really precious work, and it allows us to keep the speed when we are here. And I also have to mention that, and I say this with a lot of respect, what has been done in terms of theological and journalist work in the past months, it's so strong. Just to give you one example, this is the Herder publication on synodality, which shows very well that we are not on a special path here in Germany, but that the Catholic Church at a global level is on the way. And Pope Francis made it clear with view to the Synod. entering the home stretch next year. And Cardinals Gregg and Hollerich make it clear very often that the Catholic Church altogether is on its way, on the move, and of course this is supported by Pope Francis. I'm grateful for the contacts we have with Cardinals Gregg and Hollerich, and I would like to draw your attention to the interview with the head of the Secretariat of Cardinal Mario Craig. We need to move. This is the second message, so to speak. Sometimes you hear questions like, well, there's the Synodal Path, Synodal Assemblies, 209 Synod members. Is this just an overarching structure? What about the grassroots? I can only tell you that, at every appointment I had in the parishes with responsible persons, I feel that there's a real movement for change. I know that there are critical voices, there are objections, and of course they reach me. Sometimes they are questioning my work as a bishop when I'm pleading for changes in catechism. But I see that many believers support the Church's decision to engage on this way. And sometimes you could also think that people might be tired. No, fatigue is simply not permitted. 359,000 Catholics left the Church over the past year. There are less and less people visiting the Mass. So we really have a challenge to proclaim the gospel anew so that it can reach society. And as a response to this faith crisis, the synodal path is one important element because it addresses the questions, the blocks, the disturbing factors that people perceive when they want to get closer to the gospel. So our task is not to simply follow the zeitgeist, but to really grow into the new culture, to be present in society, to make offers for reaching an understanding with the believers so that they can really take in the beautiful message of Jesus Christ. This faith crisis, which evokes a lot of criticism with regard to the Church in our country and at a global level, we cannot simply rely on an automatism. And the resolutions of the Synodal Path are not automatisms either, according to the motto that, the Protestant Church, they have all this, and why can't you do that? No, this is not our issue. We want to follow the gospel in a better way. We want to build bridges. We want to really explore the will of God. From the departing point, the scandalous crimes and the covering up of abuse, we want to tackle the systemic root causes of this crisis and overcome them in a way that abuse can be excluded as much as possible within the Catholic Church in the future. So this is the large perspective. And when talking to Synod members, I feel that they want to live up to this responsibility, each of them at their place. Bishops, priests, members of the religious orders, and representatives of the lay communities from different generations. All of us represent like a mirror image of the Catholic Church in Germany. We are not alone. To go back to the theme of the Herder publication, the questions we are raising here are being addressed at a global level as well. Very often we hear the reproach that the Synodal Path is a German special path, and this is not true. What has been put forward by the German bishops' conferences to the World Synod shows a different picture. We are working on themes that are very important to many people in the Western secular liberal world, in a society that is used to democracy and plurality. And we are facing the challenges, the questions that are being asked. And we are not only looking at them, we are working on them. And I think this differentiates us from the other contributions to the World Bishop Synod. We are collecting arguments and we are delivering them as well. We present our argumentation with a great deal of modesty and put them on the table, so to speak, of the Universal Church so that they can be discussed there. So this is where we are standing, and it makes me quite confident with regard to our progress here. And it also has to do with my personal commitment to the synodal path. We have started something, and we are now in the middle of a process that has advanced very well, and I agree with Ms. Stetter-Karp. It is like the entry to a new form of synodal cooperation, coexistence that I wish to be lived in Germany and at a global level.
Und Vizepräsident des Zentralkomitees der deutschen Katholiken, Professor Dr. Thomas Söding, auch herzlich willkommen.
Ja, ein herzliches Willkommen auch von meiner Seite her. Ich sehe den synodalen Weg in Deutschland und auf der ganzen Welt als ein echtes Hoffnungszeichen. Machen wir uns nichts vor, die Kirche macht Schlagzeilen durch Probleme, durch Skandale, durch Missmut. Und fragen wir uns, wo sind eigentlich diejenigen Orte, in denen die Konzentration auf den Glauben, die Wahrnehmung der Realität dieser Welt und auch die Freude daran, getauft zu sein, ein Gotteskind zu sein, zum Ausdruck kommen. Und meine Erfahrung auf dem synodalen Weg bislang war, hier ist ein solcher Ort. Und zwar ein Ort, der jetzt nicht nur dem allgemeinen Erfahrungsaustausch dient, sondern der tatsächlich verständlich, verbindlich berät und entscheidet. Diese Linie müssen wir jetzt weiter durchziehen. Wir machen dies in einem neuen Kontext. Zum einen haben wir selber ein bisschen gelernt, wie Synode geht. Bislang recht erfolgreich, möge es so bleiben. Zum anderen hat sich der internationale Horizont verschoben. Am Anfang, Sie werden sich erinnern, ist ja versucht worden, den römischen Prozess gegen das, was wir in Deutschland aufgesetzt haben, auszuspielen. Dieser Versuch, die eine Initiative gegen die andere auszuspielen, ist gescheitert. Sie ist gescheitert, weil durch den von Franziskus angestoßenen weltweiten Prozess deutlich geworden ist, dass die Probleme, die wir hier aus gutem Grund von der MHG-Studie abgeleitet diskutieren, weltweit präsent sind. Sie hatten nur bislang keinen Ort, um tatsächlich artikuliert zu werden. Wir haben hier einen Ort, dass diese Probleme angesprochen werden, aber wir haben auch die Werkzeuge, die uns in die Lage versetzen, die Probleme zu analysieren und Lösungsvorschläge vorzubereiten. Ja, das, was wir hier in Deutschland machen, ist jetzt kein Exportmodell für die ganze Welt, aber es ist doch sozusagen ein ganz klar profiliertes Format, in dem die Verbindlichkeit und Klarheit des Glaubens in den Beratungs- und Entscheidungsprozessen zum Ausdruck kommt. Eine ganz wichtige Rolle dabei spielt die Theologie. Ich bin ja selber von dieser Zunft. Eine Theologie, die gesellschaftlich relevant ist, eine Theologie, die an der Kirche
as well. I'm interested in this theology that is in touch and in conversation with bishops, with lay people, with everybody. This is what we stand up for. This is what we want to convey, and I hope that these processes can also be conveyed to other parts in the world and can follow and continue there also. Bishop Bode is going to speak about the Women's Forum also. Eberstädter Karp mentioned also the topic of creating a consistent synodal council, and at this point it is plain to see the attempt to defame the synodal path, saying that we want to abolish priesthood. This attempt failed. Take a look at the foundational text of the Forum on Priests. Take a look at the way and the differentiated way how people speak about celibacy, how they want to maintain celibacy. This is a sign. This is a sign that our church and our society need. And let's take a look also at the Forum 4 on sexuality and ethics. Catholic Church is probably the last major organization that launches its process of learning. It is very important that the basic decisions that seem to be eternal, they are temporal. I'm a scholar with regard to the Bible. And to tell people that there is no intersexuality or that there's no transsexuality, with the Bible in the hand, this is absurd. We need to tackle this problem, this issue, and we need to start a conversation on that. So I do believe that we started with the right topics, and if we don't tackle those topics that are really urgent, people who are affected and who survive sexual violence will be those affected even more. I am looking forward to wonderful debates and resolutions. We need patience, of course, and I would like to quote the Apostle Paul, who said, "Be vigilant and firm in faith, courageous and strong." Thank you so much, Professor Söding, and we will listen now to Bishop Franz Josef Bode, the Vice President of the German Bishop Conference and the Bishop of Osnabrück. Welcome, everybody. I would tie in with what we heard from Bishop Betzing. We do not only present questions, but we work on questions, and the work is included here, and a lot of work has been done in the recent month. Many things that we are really thankful for. We find ourselves in the penultimate stage of the synodal path and assemblies, and we will reconsider the foundations also. We are going to work on 3 foundational texts in second reading. This is a packed agenda, and a lot depends on these texts for the future of our path. And we owe these texts to a lot of different people who worked in the forums and who also participated in the hearings and debated things also in the hearings with the bishops. So there was a dissemination of the work during past month that is part, of course, of synodality. And with regard to the visitation, I do realize that the things are on the agenda. It takes time until parishes speak about certain things, but the bishop again and again is being asked about things. And I also do see, and I would like to underline that change is truly necessary. We feel tailwind of the major synod, with the many proposals coming from Universal Church, many topics, and they support our topics, and they are probably happy that we already tackled those topics And you can tell everywhere that this happens. People speak about structures of power, participation in parishes. It is very important. It is not only about debates and consulting, but it's about shaping things together and being able to participate, not only being the priest delegating things because the priest doesn't have enough time, but participation from within, from the inner core of responsibility of the faithful. And what priesthood means then, at this backdrop, it is even more profound because it is a service to unity if everybody is involved. And so many people can get involved with their gifts and talents, and then priesthood as a service is going to have a new function and a new charism. I'm very interested in more women being able to participate, men and women working well together, and that this is dear to my heart is clear because I'm part of forum number 3. And of course, again, we are going to discuss women in ministries. We improved the situation in past years, but not enough. We will speak especially about women participating in ministries and in sacraments, and something that has been tackled thoroughly in the foundational text is the question on women in ordained ministries, diaconate in the first place, but also an opening towards the questions, what are the arguments on a universal church level, because things further developed. We see that people tackle topics on level of theology and sciences. And during past month, we did so with a thoroughness that I'm delighted of. You know that it's about different forms of life, about sexual morals, as has been mentioned already. And as has been mentioned also, these are topics that do not tackle our faith in God, but if I believe in a God who became flesh for everybody and with everybody, I cannot but deal with those topics. And let's not forget that everything is rooted in this terrible crime that happened in the midst of the church, abuse. And it is good that the Council of Affected People is also present here again in Frankfurt. And with regard to the credibility of the church, we have to make sure that we do not focus on ourselves and our reputation, but we need to focus on the victims and those who suffer. And I do believe that this was the launching point of the process in the first place, and we need to integrate that also into the Universal Synod, because this goes not only for Germany, but for church in a global sense. As bishops, we have a special responsibility, and this is very clear because we need to come to terms and adopt the foundational text, and we need the majorities of the bishops. I'm positive. We present also great implementation texts. A lot of work has been done, a lot of preparation has been done, and now we can take decisions. Thank you so much, Bishop Bode. Before handing the floor over to Ms. Baas, who's going to continue to be a moderator, I would like to make sure that you know that you need to speak in the microphone to make sure that everybody can hear you. a lot of requests came in on Bishop Dieser comment. Bishop Dieser and Ms. Mock are going to be available for short interviews for everybody. So at 4 o'clock we have a general interview with them. Ms. Baas, you are going to continue. Thank you so much.
I would like to thank Evelina Sova and Reinhard Sentes, who will be carrying the mics around. Please raise your hand if you want to ask a question. Once it's your turn, tell us who you are, which media you represent, and then briefly ask your question. At 1:45, that's in 15 minutes, we will end here. We will end the press conference because the Synodal Committee will pay a visit to the protesters outside. And of course, we would like to invite you to accompany us. I've got a question to Bishop Betzing. You have met a man in Karlsruhe who's not a fan of the synodal path, Kurt Koch, a cardinal of the Curia. What do you say with regard to his criticism? We are first going to collect 2 or 3 questions so that we have enough input. Next question. Martin Rottweiler of NTV. My question goes to Ms. Stetterkap and Bishop Betzing. Ms. Stetterkap, you have emphasized how important it is to make the synodal process, to make it binding. So if your suggestion for the Synodal Council doesn't gain a majority, would it still be binding for you? And the third question, Franziska Hein of the press service of the Protestant Church. 2 questions. One regarding the number of bishops present in the Synodal Assembly, and a second question to Bishop Betzing and Ms. Stetterkap. We have these little balls, stress balls they are called sometimes, or anger balls as you call them in Germany. Will they be used by you? Or what about the general mood within the Synodal Assembly? Okay, thank you very much. So to the panel first. Let's start maybe with the last question, and I can briefly tell you, and this will be in the press folder you are going to receive. There are 209 members of the Synodal Assembly, Synod members, 69 bishops and auxiliary bishops are there altogether, and 62 are present here. I pass the floor to Ms. Stetterkap with regard to the last question. Yes, I'll start with a little bit of humor. These stress balls, we have chocolate on the table, whole chocolate bars. I think that's enough in order to get calm again if a situation is a bit difficult. Your second question was with regard to the Synodal Council, whether if it fails, whether this is binding. Yes, of course it will be binding then, but I do hope that if a very critical moment becomes visible, that we are able to find a way to postpone it to the 5th Synodal Assembly. This is not the last Synodal Assembly, but the second last assembly. But I want to do everything in my possibilities to make it possible, because the laity is very supportive of that, and we don't want to be a one-day wonder, so to speak. And then there was a question regarding Cardinal Koch, Kurt Koch. Mr. Rottweiler, who asked a question. The decisions that are being taken here are binding. If there's a rejection in this context, that doesn't mean that synodality will not go on or will not be strengthened in the future. It is a desire that has been expressed by Pope Francis, and we are, of course, following this. Our meeting, my meeting with Cardinal Koch was brief. We actually exchanged views regarding the current situation. We were very frank with each other. We know each other very, very well. But most of the time we spent together praying and singing And that was a beautiful experience in the context of the Ecumenical Council that took place. Okay, now the next two questions, and then we will go on with questions that have been asked online. But first of all, two more questions here in the room. Theo Dirkus of the WDR. I've got a question pertaining to facts. If a foundational text is adopted with 2/3 majority of the assembly, but not with a 2/3 majority of the bishops, how can you go on working with these texts in this field? In such a case. Then Michael Schrum. Evelina, please hand over the mic. Michael Schrum is my name, of Polyforum. Bishop Betzing, I would be interested to know whether you have made a survey in order to check the mood of the bishops, or do you have any expectations where decisions could be narrow? Stefan Orb, HERA correspondency, and administrative jurisdiction has been mentioned as a topic up for reform many times. And you said that there would be reports regarding the development of this, and if I understood it correctly, this item has been taken off the agenda once again. So what's your comment on that, Bishop Betzing? Okay, we start with Theo Dirkus and the question, what happens, let me just summarize it, what happens if a foundational text fails to obtain the 2/3 majorities by the bishops? What happens to the implementation text? I would like to answer. It would be dramatic indeed if a foundational text was rejected in the second reading, especially, and we said that in our statements, that the texts are very differentiated. For example, the text on women really puts forward a great deal of openness for what women want, and men as well. We are not against each other here. We are agreeing, basically, in terms of what is necessary. So if a text failed, so to speak, it would be dramatic. But your question was rather to know what is going to happen to the implementation texts in such a case. Formally speaking, they are independent of this. So formally speaking, the implementation texts would not be dead, so to speak, if a foundational text was not adopted. Okay, Bishop Betzing, regarding the mood amongst the bishops. Well, we didn't have a test vote or a mock vote at the Spring General Assembly because to guarantee the freedom of conscience of each and every bishop in the same way we guarantee the freedom of conscience of every member of the Synod. However, we spoke on the delicate points, and in spring we worked on anthropology and salvation doctrine. We are going to continue to work on this at our General Assembly in autumn. When it comes to synodality in general, it is being discussed independent of the decisions that are being taken here. That's the way we deal with it in the bishops' conference. I'm quite confident that we gain a 2/3 majority of the bishops, but I'm not a prophet, of course. Regarding the points that we have decided upon unanimously and that have been sent to room is that we want an administrative jurisdiction at the level of the church. We want a disciplinary order for priests and clerics, and we want a professionalized criminal justice, especially when it comes to abuse and the punishment, a legal punishment of such infringements. With regard to feedback, the first feedback we received was quite critical, and I responded to that in September last year by putting forward a lot of arguments, and I provided some more arguments because in this letter we asked for further deliberations, and the Secretariat of State gave us a signal that the talks will be taken up. So I cannot tell you anything new regarding the status quo here, except for the fact that we will be entering discussions. Okay, no questions online. We can continue in our room here in the auditorium. So a third and last round. Next questions, please. We have one question here at the front row. Philipp Gessler of Zeitzeichen. Let's imagine that with regard to the foundational text on women, we will have a two-thirds majority, also two-thirds majority of the bishops. And let's assume that the implementation text will also be adopted. That would still mean that each and every bishop could, with regard to implementation, do whatever they want. And the same applies to all other implementation texts. Is that correct? Okay, two more questions. A very simple question. Which watchdog has been sent by Rome, so to speak, because at this moment there's a meeting of the nuncios in Rome, so who's representing the Holy See? And could you be more specific with regard to Cardinal Koch's criticism? In Switzerland, women are allowed to lead baptism and marriages, so why can't we do that in Germany? Third and last question is possible. Is there anybody else who would like to ask a question? Mr. Bacher, ZDF. What about the participation of the bishops in the individual forums when it comes to preparation? I have the impression that some bishops did not really take part in the preparation meetings, but they like to talk about the synodal path, especially when it comes to comparing it to the international development. Okay, first question to Bishop Betzing. How free are the bishops in their dioceses with regard to implementing the decisions of the synodal path? Well, the bishops cannot simply do what they want, but they do what their mission is. But yes, they are free in this sense. That's also established in the regulations of the synodal path. Of course, the decisions that are taken here are not binding to any individual bishop. But you can imagine that once there is a resolution by the Synodal Assembly, certain expectations arise within the individual dioceses. So a bishop must have very good reasons not to follow such a resolution, or not to implement it. Regarding the meeting of the nuncios, the apostolic nuncio at this moment is meeting the nuncios in Rome. That's a meeting taking place every 3 years. So he said that he would be absent, and he has sent Sebastian Isano, his secretary, who is here. And with regard to Cardinal Koch, I cannot tell you much more, because we didn't, as I told you, we didn't have an extensive discussion. We had a short exchange, asked about how we were feeling in a fraternal manner. Bishop Betzing, please, could you simply continue and answer the last two questions? First of all, the question on the situation in Switzerland, or comparison between the Swiss and German situation, and the last question regarding the active participation of bishops in the forums. With regard to baptism, we have one diocese in Germany that actually implements or is implementing new possibilities that have been opened up by Rome. But unlike Switzerland, they have a small bishops' conference in Switzerland. And we want to prepare everything very well. So we forwarded it, so to speak, to the respective committees who will weigh all the arguments before we are opening such a solution or recommending such a solution to all bishops. So we are making our first experiences, because in the Diocese of Essen, this possibility of women baptizing, it works. With regard to what Mr. Erbacher said, I can only say, yeah, that's correct. Thank you for your attention, for your questions. We will now go down, have a look at or meet the protesters. And Bishop Dieser and Birgit Mock will give interviews in front of the auditorium at 4. So see you again tomorrow. Thank you.